Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Around the Town of Branford with Henry and Frank. I'm Frank Toohill, and today we're here at 84 Thimble Islands Road in Stony Creek, and we're going to take you on a tour of the Stony Creek Museum. And it's going to be a great program, and this is open to the public as well. And, if you live in Branford, Stony Creek, you should come down here to this fascinating museum. This is a treasure in Stony Creek. There's a lot of treasures in Stony Creek, and this is one of the biggest. And I'm speaking with Ted Ells. He's the vice president of the Stony Creek Museum. Great to see you today, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Welcome to the Stony Creek Museum. We're very pleased that you're here today.
That's great to hear. Now, Ted, I'm curious. Would you tell us as to how did this great museum get started?
The music got started about 20-some years ago when there was a celebration of the Stony Creek quarry workers, who were, of course, the Stony Creek had a number of quarries, and the Stony Creek granite was taken from here and went into such buildings as the base of the Brooklyn Bridge and the Statue of Liberty and monuments all around the world. So we had a big celebration for the workers, and it was very successful, and we had some money left over. So about 10 years later, some of us thought we should really start a museum, and we should also have some archives. Also at the same time, a local gentleman who used to help people clean out their houses when they were moving or if they had died, they all thought he had taken all their stuff to the dump, but he took it to his garage. So there was a whole treasure trove of things which he gave to us. So that's how we got started.
Wasn't that nice? Now, Ted, speaking of archive materials, are you still looking for
Absolutely. Anybody that has anything having to do with Stony Creek, we would love to see it. We can either, if you want to give it to us, we'll take it, or if we can make a copy of it or take a picture of it, we would love to have it, because we're trying to get our archive. We do have a number of archives already, and we do have, of course, exhibits which we have changing most every year.
Okay, so it's call them if you have any Stony Creek materials, archive materials, 203-488-4014. That's the Stony Creek Museum phone number, 488-4014. And you can also check them out online, stonycreekmuseum.org. Well, that's great to hear. So your archives are downstairs, right?
They're downstairs, and our archivist is Maureen DeRoss White, who works at the Smithsonian, so she really knows what she's doing.
Wow.
And she's been doing it ever since we started this museum. She does a very good job.
That's wonderful, Ted. Now, I suppose that the archives basically are about the Thimble Islands, the oysters of Stony Creek,
right,
the granite down here,
right,
and the old puppet house, right, which was the Macri Weil puppets, right?
Yes. And actually right now we have about 12 or 13 of the actual original Sicilian puppets in the museum, which we're quite excited about.
I can't wait to see them.
They're on loan from the Weil family, and we're really very excited about that. We also have exhibits such as the 1938 hurricane, which was a very big deal here.
Yeah.
Also boats. Boats are obviously a very big deal here. At one point in the 1880s, there were about 6 hotels in Stony Creek, so that was a summer destination for people from New York coming up on steamships. So that's a great history for us too. So there's a lot more than just the quarries, and which we've also had an exhibit on postcards of Stony Creek. There are a lot of postcards of Stony Creek out there.
Oh, the postcards, yeah, right, because that was a big thing in those days, right?
Right, yes.
Postcard collections, yeah. So, all right, so Ted, I just wanted to give us, the hours. When is this great museum open?
The museum is open from about middle of May through middle of October, and it's open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4.
Okay, so that's...
We also have a lot of school groups come through here, and they can make arrangements. So if someone wants to come and it's not during that time, if they have a group, or even if they want to come on their own, we have a number of board members who'd be happy to show them around.
488-4014. That's the number. If you have a class, that wants to come down, that's the number to call. So Oh, that's really great. Now, how about parking, sir? I mean, where can the public park?
We have there's a town parking lot right behind or next to the museum, next to the firehouse. I think it holds about maybe 20 cars. We obviously share it with the town and other people, but it's usually always parking is available there.
Okay.
And it makes a nice excursion for a lot of these groups. What they do is they come to the museum, and then they go down to the Thimble Island tour boats, take a tour of the Thimble Islands. There are a couple of good restaurants in town, so people go to the Stony Creek Market and Thimbleberries, have a bite to eat. So it makes a very nice day.
And there's also a pizza restaurant open.
Even Thursday, I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings in the summertime.
So I mean, this place has everything down here, Stony Creek. So that's great, Ted. Now, also, I just wanted to know if there's any charge to visit the museum.
No, there's no charge to visit the museum. We obviously accept contributions, but there's no charge. And we've been supported very well by the community. We're very happy with our support. I think we do a good job, and I think people really appreciate what we've been doing.
Now, Ted, so I think just in the last 2 months, the RTM, which I'm on, approved a new 20-year lease extension, because this is a town-owned building. It was originally a church, and so I just wanted to know. The reason it was a 20-year lease extension was to help the board in fundraising, right?
Right. Well, what happened was, I think it was about 2010 that the lease was signed. It was a 20-year lease, which seemed like a long time then. And then after it had been signed, we put probably about $200,000. We raised and put $200,000 into the museum to renovate the museum.
Wow.
And so now we have other needs that we want to try to do some more renovations of the museum. And amazingly enough, we only had about 6 years left in the lease, so we thought it would be prudent for us to, before we started putting more money into the museum, that we got another 20-year lease.
Yeah.
And we've been a tenant of the town all the time, and they've been very good to us, and we've had a very good relationship. There's also, the Rotary has some space in our first floor where they have stored their books for the book sale, and that's been going on for the whole time that we've been here too.
So I believe at the time that you took over this building, the old St. Teresa's Church, I believe that the town of Branford first selectman was Uncle Ross, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the building, my understanding was that the building, first of course it was St. Teresa's Church, and then it was a community center.
Yeah.
You can still see the basketball lines in the floor.
Yeah.
Then I think it was vacant for about 20 years.
Wow.
So when we took it over, it was nice to have the building being used again.
Now also, speaking of former First Selectman Uncle Ross, he's going to be joining us inside on this museum tour. So that is going to be great. So anyway, right, if you have any objects of Stony Creek, photographs, postcards, anything, and you aren't sure what to do with them, or if you want them preserved for future generations, right? This place has an archive, and as Ted just said, it's run by a person that worked for the Smithsonian.
Right. Also, we have a lot of speaker programs from various times during the year. So if you look at our website, which is StonyCreekMuseum.com, you can see that. Also, we've done some nice fundraising events. The last one we had was a beer, barbecue, and boats event where we had a barbecue, and we'd had boats, old boats that were for sale, and some we could just look at, and that was very successful. So we do watch for those too.
That's great. Also, too, this organization, right? It's a nonprofit, and it's approved by the IRS as a 501c3 tax exemption. So you can make a donation to the Stony Creek Museum.
Correct. That's right. That's tax deductible.
So so that basically is the opening. You got all the basic information. It's open, as Ted said, from about the middle of May till the middle of October. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4. The museum is free. There's parking right here on the premises. And
I can say one other thing about one other person that was very instrumental in this museum. It was Judy Robinson, and we call her the visionary because she's the one who had the vision. And I guess she and I were one of the early supporters of the museum. And her husband, who wanted nothing to do with the project in the beginning, basically he was a contractor. He's a contractor, and ended up being overseeing all the renovations to it. So it's a nice story.
Yeah, that's a great story. And this is a great place, Stony Creek. Great part of the town of Branford. So anyway, so let's bring our camera inside now, and we'll take a look at the Stony Creek Museum. And so stay with us. Okay. Thanks for talking with us, Ted.
Thanks, Frank. Glad you're here.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have now entered the great Stony Creek Museum, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to our program Around the Town of Branford with Henry and Frank, former First Selectman Anthony Unk DeRoss, who was our town First Selectman for 12 years. And he's with us now. He's got a total recall history of Stony Creek and all of its wonderful features, the islands, the oystering, and we're standing here now in front of some puppets on loan from the Macquarie Weil Theater. Now that used to be where the current fantastic Legacy Theater is now, and they did a wonderful job. That they fixed that place up from top to bottom. It was about to fall down, right, Unc?
Yeah. Actually, it was condemned.
It was condemned.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are still owned by the Weil family. They're extremely heavy and they're very hard to operate. But I do remember that there were a couple performances by James Weil in the old puppet house in Stony Creek. Now, my first question is, I believe right at the last performance I went to, there was one scene where I guess one of the puppets' heads gets cut off or the hand gets cut off and blood flows out onto the floor. I just wanted to know if this is one of the puppets around here. Do you recognize any?
I don't know that. No, I don't think they are here. Not the one that happened to, but they were very convincing. They were great shows. There was no question about it.
Yeah.
And really, the puppet house started off as a puppet house, not a theater. Uh-huh. Grace Weil, which would have been Jimmy's mother, toured the world actually, and she collected them. There was, right at the heyday, there was 4,000 puppets down there. But that included shadow puppets, which, by the way, they had the second edition of the original Punch and Judy. Mm-hmm. Shadow puppets. They had track puppets. They used to go down the wall and they would play the drum. They had paper puppets, finger puppets, and then the Sicilian puppets that you see now. And they actually that's how Sal McCree got here. Uh-huh. He was I don't know, the son or nephew or something of the original carver of these puppets, so that's how he got here, and taught Jimmy and a lot of the local guys how to make these puppets work. Yeah. And they're heavy. They're about 65, 70 pounds, those things, and they make them work. And but the one thing about the puppet house, it originally started out as a shoe factory.
Oh, really?
And it was owned by the Howds. Mm-hmm. And then one of the Howds sold it to I don't know if it was the Parish Players or one of those groups, or the Mercury Theater, one of those groups, and slowly became an entertainment place.
Yeah.
But originally it was a museum for puppets. Oh, that's how it started. Mm-hmm. And then they come in and they had some pretty great plays in there.
Absolutely.
They did a good job. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so right, they're very heavy. So as far as putting on the performances, Unc, isn't it true that the stage was specially built so that they had to stand up almost over the wall?
It had a stage. It had a high stage above it that you couldn't see. But if you notice, there's hooks on these rods
Oh, yeah.
They would hook on the railing up there, and as it was the turn of that particular puppet to come out on the stage, they would just grab that thing and then they swing it into the thing. And but that's what those hooks were for, to hook on the railing. You couldn't see it from the you know, the out there in the audience.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you look at their faces, their faces are incredible, and
Yeah.
and of course the stories that they put on are quite something. I don't know them all, but they're the days of Charlemagne, so it's.
It's true.
Yeah. Also, one of the one. Well, we get to it. I'll talk about that one. But
The other thing too, isn't it true that back in those days when they were going strong down at Stony Creek, I mean, right, they just opened the windows, there was no air conditioning, so when they operated those puppets, they must have been pretty hot.
Oh yeah, it was. I'm sure. I'm sure it was. You know what? Air conditioning was a big deal because nobody was used to it.
Yeah, that's right,
but now
yeah.
today it is a big deal. They just get a little bit uncomfortable, and you got to have that air conditioning.
That's true.
But
also before it became a puppet theater, it was called the Parish Players, and they were there for a while, and they had some quite famous people from New York coming up. They had Orson Welles was here for one summer, and also Joseph Cotton. Now the Legacy, Unc mentioned the Legacy Theater is now taking it over and put a lot of money into fixing it up. And it's a gorgeous theater, and they're doing the same thing now. They're bringing a lot of people up from New York, Broadway actors from New York.
Speaking of big stars, right? I mean, this continues because right this week in Stony Creek, from what I've heard, Julie Andrews, right? The great Julie Andrews, the actress, Mary Poppins, Sound of Music. She's apparently here and helping co-produce her daughter's play. Is that right?
I don't know that, Frank. I couldn't swear to that, but I heard that's probably true. Yeah.
Did you hear that, sir?
I've heard those stories too. I think the play that they're putting on is directed by Julie Andrews.
Isn't that something, though? So this whole thing with the big stars down in Stony Creek continues. Too, I wanted to ask you about the stars. You were telling me before all the actors and actresses that came down here to go out to the islands.
Yeah.
Would you give us that list again?
Well, I'm going to tell you the ones I personally met, like James Earl Jones, and he used to go out to Muriel Resnick's place out there on Cutting Two. She wrote the screenplay for on a Wednesday or every Wednesday or I forget what the title, but something. She wrote that one, and also you had Ben Gazzara used to go out there regularly. Gary Cooper, not Gary Cooper, Gary Moore. He used to stop in twice a year on his Red Wing was the name of his sailboat, big sailboat, painted red. And he would anchor up out there, and I would bring him out his alcohol, so to speak,
really? Sure.
and I would bring him out his newspapers and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he'd stay a couple days, and then he told me when he'd be back, and I'd be waiting for him with his newspapers and ready to go.
That's great.
Yeah, and they had him, a lot of. You had Weil out there was involved in doing the screenplay for Gone with the Wind.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Leonard Weil, which was Jimmy's father.
Oh, really?
All right, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So as you hear, I mean, in the old days, Stony Creek was big, and also in today's, Stony Creek is big. So, all right. So there was one puppet that you wanted to talk about. All right. So let's move across the room.
Sure.
All right. We're speaking with Branford, former first selectman of 12 years, Anthony Unc DeRoss, and also the Stony Creek Museum vice chairman, Ted Ells. So this is
one of my favorites. It's obviously the devil. One time I was in here, and it was like this, and I went into this room, and a little while later I came out, and it was turned this way, facing me. And there was nobody else in the building, so I don't quite know how that happened. But so it's watching. You can tell by his eyes. It's
now also too. You're ready. If you look up at the picture or the portrait of the puppets, I don't think that's the right portrait for that puppet, right?
No.
That's Turpin, but
right, yeah.
that's different. different.
The other thing, while I'm here next to the door here, we did have a movie which was produced by the museum, which is called Born at the Water's Edge, which is a fabulous movie if you haven't seen it. It was shown on Channel 8 in New Haven. It's also been shown several times at the Legacy Theater. We have it here in our video room here. So if you come to the museum, be sure and ask to see that movie. It's about 29 minutes.
Okay. You know, too, also, we talked about, heat, the air conditioning. Now, if you look at this beautiful building, right, even though it's, it's pretty hot out there today, but it's nice and cool in here. They got the nice ceiling fans turned on, and it's a beautiful wood ceiling, great wood floor. I mean, this place is really taken care of very well. And so, this place, the museum, it's in really good hands. So be sure to come down and see it, right? It's open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4. And it's free, and there's parking, here on site. So, be sure to take advantage of it. So, okay, so this pretty much concludes the puppet portion of the tour. And so what we're going to do now is go to the world-famous Stony Creek granite with a world-famous expert on the granite, Unc DeRoss. So stay with us. Okay, so we're still here at the Stony Creek Museum, and we're going to talk now about the wonderful history, which is still going on, in fact, of the Stony Creek granite, the world-famous pink granite. It takes a beautiful shine when it's polished. It's all over the world in many, many locations. And with us now is like the expert on Stony Creek granite, the history, and even its present use today, Anthony Unc DeRoss, former Branford First Selectman for 12 years.
Hello, Frank. Well, anyway, we're in the area where this summer I think they're going to be presenting a display for the Stony Creek Quarry, or the Stony Creek Granite. Like you notice, this sign over here says Earl Dodd, President. Earl Dodd bought the quarry off of the Norcross brothers, who actually started the quarry back in 1881, I believe it was, the present quarry. And he bought it right after the First World War. One of the very few quarries that survived the results of the First World War, because the steel was become shortage, very expensive. Black powder couldn't be had and stuff like that. But Stony Creek kept going through all that. And when they sold the quarry to Dodd, it was considered the best and equipped quarry in all of the Northeast. And it was incredible, the operation that was there, the buildings and the tools and the equipment that they had, which, by the way, I remember, because back in there was absolutely everything was intact up until around 1957. But and then when Castellucci came in, they cleaned everything up, took the old buildings down, and scrapped all this steel and started their operation up until the 80s. That they stayed there. So anyway, that would be that. But the rest of this here is just a partial list of the sites that the Stony Creek pink granite is in.
Oh,
and that's in a short period of time. This is only in less than 20 years.
Wow, look at that list.
And these are major buildings.
Jeez.
The granite came into being because of the buildings and the cities were burning down. That was the reason and the building codes actually were in favor of the brick or stone. And if you're going to build an important building, you use stone because it, sets something. Like, for example, the Blackstone Library. Can you imagine if that was made out of wood? You wouldn't even pay attention to it. Yep. But now you see that massive stone edifice is beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
So, that's what they did.
I see.
And some of there is a display of the tools they used on the quarry. So, and they also have the photographs of some of the actual things. Over here is this crew here. Right here was, this was probably the last 4 men that kept going prior to Castellucci buying it. All right? And my grandfather's over in the back. Charlie Rossi's there. and a couple of them they're quarrying out of stone here. And then Castellucci converted it, and there's a man using a torch. That's Oswald Worcester. He's using a torch to do what these guys are doing by hand.
So those spikes in the ground there at the quarry, that's when they used black
No,
powder?
those are wedges.
Oh, wedges, okay.
Yeah, that they push on.
I see.
Each one of those little wedges over here that these guys are pounding on,
Yeah,
down on through here,
yeah.
exert over 15 tons of pressure each time they strike it. So it slowly pushes them apart.
That's an awful lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and,
Okay, that's great.
and they, of course, have a display of the old tools they had.
Yeah.
And I say old tools, half of these are mine. I used them.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. This here is the base of one of the quarry derricks.
Uh-huh.
This here is a piece of Douglas fir. This particular piece is the end piece off of the boom. All right. Now, and if you notice, these are all cut 12-sided. These were actually masts off warships.
Oh.
That's what the derricks were made out of in the quarry, the wooden ones.
Yeah, because of the height.
And the guide derricks were actually boat masts from the United States Navy.
Wow.
And they were surplus. You know, they were going to steam. They didn't need these things.
Wow.
And the largest or the tallest single spar guide derrick in the world was in this quarry. It was 130 feet high.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
big.
So that's a pretty serious piece of wood.
That's
you know?
big.
Yeah.
So, right, I suppose that those derricks had to be that tall because you're talking about like huge columns of pink granite being brought up, right?
They were tall because you had long booms that you had to reach. You know, you could reach out, and also the boom had to pass underneath the guide cables because they could turn 360 degrees. See, so yeah.
Okay, so now just across the hall here at the Stony Creek Museum, we see some beautiful color photos. So, I mean, those are different places that have used the.
These are some
Just a second. Here's the vice president of the museum, Ted Ells.
Behind you is kind of a neat thing which we were pretty excited about. This is a quarry worker's trunk. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, some neighbors of ours found it in their attic. So look in your attic and see if you can find things that we might be interested in. But they found this in their attic. Wow. It had never been opened in over 100 years. So I was here when we invited the press to come, and I've never seen so many reporters so excited about to see what's inside. And it was a real treasure trove because there are clothes, obviously, glasses, some newspapers of the day. I think the Titanic was mentioned in one of the newspapers. So it's really quite a treasure trove.
Wow, that's amazing. And like again, as we said before, you know, a purpose of the Stony Creek Museum is to collect all sorts of materials, photos, postcards. If you have anything and everything about Stony Creek, they would like to take a look at it and possibly keep it or make copies of it. And so you should get in touch with them. And the phone number is 488-4014. All right, so that's great. I think we covered the granite pretty well, although we should look at the...
Did you mention the Statue of Liberty Museum?
We haven't done that yet,
Okay.
Ted. There's pictures behind the camera here, so maybe we could swivel around a little bit.
Okay. Also, recently there's a new Statue of Liberty museum on Liberty Island. And the story we heard about that was that they were getting ready to build this new museum, and they had somebody from China who was going to give them a real deal on granite. And fortunately, one of our neighbors here got a hold of the powers that be down there and said, you know, that base of the Statue of Liberty is Stony Creek granite, and to do something different with the museum would be a tragedy. So the person said, well, yeah, I think you're right. And so now the Stony Creek granite is in the museum.
Oh, that's
Just-
good.
Just opened a couple years ago.
Where it should be. Okay, so if we come over here, okay, this is the base of the Statue of Liberty, which is made of Stony Creek granite. Now, Unc and I were talking just before we came on about, you know, the true origin of this granite. So, Unc, so you mean currently now the actual quarry where it was cut from is in Guilford, It's just over the town line on Route 146. What you do is, there's that real curvy bridge you go under, the railroad bridge, and then you take the next left, and it's in there. And there's a book that Carl Balistracci, who was the Guilford first selectman, wrote a book. But at the time it was cut, it was in Branford because Mr. Leet, who owns Leet's Island, still. The thing he did was he had the town line changed, but this was after this granite was cut. So at the time this was cut, it was from a Branford quarry, right, Unc?
Yeah, that's right. That was actually Beatty's Quarry. It was the name of it. Yeah. And these pictures here show them extracting the stone, loading it onto schooners, and then bringing it down to Bedloe's Island, which is where the Statue of Liberty is now. Mm-hmm. And then these pictures also show the actual construction of the base.
Yeah.
This stone here is actually from Beatty's Quarry.
Mm-hmm.
If you looked at the two stones side by side, you could see the difference.
Uh-huh.
There is a difference. In the pink granite from there and the pink granite from Stony Creek, there's a little bit of a difference. In fact, the Thimble Islands are pink granite, but they're not Stony Creek pink granite.
Uh-huh.
All right, so that's a particular vein, a small vein that they're quarrying now, is what Stony Creek is.
Now, Uncle, so I just want to ask you, so as far as Beatty's Quarry, this is from Beatty's Quarry, you mentioned that. Now, that's the big quarry that's out on,
Olive Old Quarry,
yeah,
the little
Old Quarry,
village
yeah, Old
of
Quarry,
Old
yeah,
Quarry
yeah.
was an entire
That was
quarry
Beatty's Quarry,
operation.
yeah.
That was an entire quarry operation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in fact, like for example, they had a chapel over there for the Catholics that it was just a little shack that was out on one of the islands, in the marsh,
Yeah.
and they would come down that way. And they did that all the way up until 1927 when they built this building.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, right. I see. Oh,
But it was still a mission of St. George and Guilford.
oh,
All the way till 1948, it became its own parish.
I see.
St.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for telling us
For
that.
on that, for this particular building. But if you notice, like this, you have Grand Central.
Yeah, that's what a beautiful
The
turnout.
entire Grand Central was Stony Creek Grand,
That
as
is
well
so
as
nice.
Penn Central.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
That's
that one
the
they
old
tore
one,
down.
the old one, yeah, which was supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah, but this is why they use stone.
Yeah.
There's no other product that you can get a building as eloquent as these are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Over here, you have the Columbia University still is using stone from here. They're still contracting and getting stone because it can match.
Yeah.
See, and that was one of the keys to some of the success, or I should say, the longevity of the Stony Creek Quarry was they can still get the stone to match these old buildings.
Yeah.
And the architects demanded that. They needed that,
Yeah. Yeah. So right. So at the time that our first selectman was John Stony, right, that there was a purchase from Castellucci of the 300 acres of open space, and then that also included, the working quarry, which is still working, as Unc said, which was another 50 acres, correct?
Right. Well, there was a total of 425.
Uh-huh.
Not all of it was contiguous.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of pieces down here that belong to the quarry are now town open space land.
Oh, that's right.
But it was broken up a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're right, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Castellucci sold it to the town. Then they needed financing for the AT&T building. They needed capital to get that thing moving, which they did, and that was a major construction project.
Well, you know what, right, Unc, so, right, at the time, right, the architect was Philip Johnson.
Right.
It was called the Chippendale Building because of the top. The top looked like a piece of Chippendale furniture, and that made international news. That really brought the quarry in Stony Creek back to life.
Yep. Yeah, it did, and it was going full blast. Then.
Yeah.
It was.
That's great.
In fact, I was working in a quarry at the time.
You were?
When they were doing that
Really?
job, yeah.
Woo.
Well, I used to work off seasons for them.
Oh, you did?
And I worked from the, late autumn on to early spring, I worked the winters out there. Well, you couldn't work out in the Thimble Islands because it was all ice.
Yeah.
It's not like today,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
But
Okay.
there, I think, is one of their major,
Yeah.
major accomplishments was the,
Yeah. Well, sorry.
battle monument at West Point.
Yeah, look at that. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
now that was done by the Norcross brothers, and that was in 1893, I think it was.
That's a solid piece, right?
That's a solid piece, yeah.
That's magnificent.
Yeah, and it's all polished.
Yeah.
They had to build a special lathe right up here in Stony Creek here, and they built that thing, shipped it out. 12 men from Stony Creek put that thing up.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Today it'd be a major thing. They couldn't find a machine big enough. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, that's great. So I think what we're going to do now is talk about the hurricanes. Oh, okay. I just heard from Ted Ells it's going to be the trolleys, so stay with us. Okay, we're here now in the portion of the Stony Creek Museum that is devoted to trolleys. Now, if you look at these exhibits, and you've already seen quite a few, you will see that they are what's known as, right? The exhibits are all known as, the best, called museum quality. And that's what you're seeing here. This is a great museum, and it's open, as we said, from the middle of May to the middle of October, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4. So please come down and see it. Again, there's free parking, and it's free and open to the public, and it's got all kinds of things about, the puppets, which were world famous. You got the pink granite, also world famous. You got stuff about the 1938 hurricane. And right now, Unctor Ross is going to tell us about the trolleys that went through Stony Creek.
That's right. These trolley, the trolley that came in through here was the Connecticut Company trolley. And that one came from Pine Orchard and came into Stony Creek and terminated in Stony Creek. It stopped at the end of what is now Thimble Island Road, used to be called Flying Point Road. But right at it stopped. And if you wanted to go on to, say, Guilford, you got on the Shoreline trolley. So right at the curve, at the bottom of Lavassa Terrace, is that railroad or trolley terminated there.
Oh, really?
All right, so you had to get off one and get onto the other. And that's how actually you got around the country, is you got off one system and got onto another system. Mm-hmm. But this was, the Connecticut Company is the one that came through here.
Wow.
And like I said, the Shoreline went out the other way. That didn't last very long, the Shoreline one, because it was interfering with or giving competition to the New York, New Haven, and Hartford. And so I think it might have been Vanderbilt. He just bought them out, and that was the end of that deal. Uh-huh. So, but anyway, this one continued to operate. Oh. And but it had a big impact on the community, because what it allowed people to come in out of the cities, come into Stony Creek, and they would go out onto the, enjoy the islands and the things, but also the massive, and I say massive because it was huge, business of hotels, particularly summer hotels. And they had them out in the islands, and you had them also here, on the mainland itself.
Yeah.
And so these trolleys were a big part of that. But by the same token, it allowed people to get out of Stony Creek, to go to New Haven or whatever they had to do.
So
Incidentally, I might mention that you didn't have to leave Stony Creek. You had everything you needed was right here in Stony Creek.
Yeah.
You had 7 places that you could buy meat right here in Stony Creek. You had taverns. You had the general stores. You had your own pharmacies. And you had shoemakers. You had dress shops. You had bakeries. It was all right here.
Well, too, right, I guess in the 1880s when the quarry was booming, this was the biggest part of Branford, right, the most populous part.
That's true. The population was as larger or larger than Branford was. Yeah. I always said that Branford existed because they ran out of parking in Stony Creek. You don't have to repeat that.
That's great.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But anyway,
Go ahead, sir.
they're talking about this display.
Yeah,
of,
that's a beautiful display, so
The library, I mean, the museum had me do that.
You,
As
you
part
did
of-
that? You did that,
yeah,
sir?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That
is-
was just to symbolize, give you an idea where how it ran.
So that's the trolley trail right here, right?
That's the trolley trail.
The
That's
current trolley
bridge.
trail that
Yeah.
that you can walk today.
Yeah.
And then this must be a Thimble Island Road.
It went through here. This is West Point.
Oh,
Road,
yeah, yeah.
And went through there, through the cut there.
Oh, that cut, yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's what and then it had its trolley station.
Uh-huh.
Was down there where that Memorial Triangle is across from the library right now. That's
of
where
course.
the trolley depot was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So,
That's really beautiful.
and then
You
went
got the
down by
ships.
Brandon's garage, right around that sharp curve and out and down to the end of Thimble Island Road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. It's not the scale, but it gives you an idea what was there.
Oh, it's
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, at the time that you made this, I mean, how much time did it take you to do that?
Oh, I forget, maybe 10 weeks.
Oh, really? Yeah, it came out really nice.
I'm working on another one. I'm doing a diorama of the quarry.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah, I started that one back in October.
Uh-huh.
I'm still working on it,
Wow.
but it'll be done pretty soon.
That'll be great to see, Unc. Yeah. That's going to come up here?
I don't know
Yeah.
if they want it.
If you want it. Did you want it, Ted?
Yeah, I certainly do want it. Another neat thing was that we have Unc's wonderful diorama, but we also had at the time, we had a board member who was a drone pilot. So he flew a drone the whole length of the trolley that is here.
Oh.
So there's actually a little film there. You can watch the current
Wow.
trail of where the trolley used to be.
Wow. That's great.
So anyway, that's like, for example, Thimble Island Road now crosses the marsh down by Seaside Hall.
Yes.
That used to be just a trolley tracks.
Uh-huh.
All right. The main road was further inland.
Oh.
All right, it was up there, it was called Mobeck Road at that time. You went down the end of Squawbrook, you got on in, you went down over to Prospect Hill,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that way.
Well,
When they abandoned this, town built a road,
uh-huh.
built a passable road over the top of the railroad tracks.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. And in some places, they're still in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tracks.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered this trolleys down here. Ted? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Ted. Yeah. Okay, all right, so currently we're going to do the world-famous Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps. So stay with us. Around the Town of Branford with Henry and Frank continues. Okay, we're just about to talk about the world-famous Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps, but before we reach that part of the museum, Ank is going to talk about the, again, world-famous oysters. The Stony Creek oysters are considered to be the best in the world. There's a great, if you're in Manhattan and you're at Grand Central Terminal, down in the basement, right, I forget the name of it, there's a world-famous oyster house. And they feature, I'm sorry, what's that, Ted? Oyster Bar. Yeah, you're right, it's called the Oyster Bar. And they have the delicious oysters from the Thimble Islands.
Well, oysters was probably, prior to the quarry, was the largest industry in Stony Creek.
Really?
Oh, yes, because, oystering all along Long Island was a major industry. Yeah. And we had a big oyster industry here. Some of these tools that are here just symbolize that, particularly the shell fishing and living off the water type thing. That's an oyster tongs are over there.
Wow.
This here is a bull rake that they, you don't tong it, you rake them. Mm-hmm. And you have different things, like you have an eel spear over there, you have lobster pots over here, an oyster dredge over there. These are all things that they lived off the water with, which was a big part of it. Yeah. The lobster business, the oystering, the clamming, and all. And this here is a picture of Ball's Dock.
Oh,
all right. Now Ball's
big.
Dock.
Ball's was big. Yeah.
Ball's Dock. You see the big? Those are already shucked corn.
Wow.
They would shuck them there and put them in the cans, and every day a truck would, sometimes a couple trucks, would be coming out of here headed for New York with a canned oyster, the Stony Creek Blue, or the Thimble Island Blue Point oyster. Just a little side note. You see that derrick in the back there?
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually mounted on a barge, which was the Molly Dodd belonged to the quarry.
Oh.
The Stony Creek Quarry, or Norcross Brothers, built this dock. Ball's Dock, which was an oyster dock, was actually built so they could bring the stone down to New York, primarily for the building of the George Washington Bridge. And so that for years belonged to the quarry.
No, I believe that's right off of Flying Point Road, right?
Exactly. There's two houses on it now.
Yeah. There's that huge one with the
Yeah,
the wheel, the ship's wheel. Now, supposedly the guy, I think he died, but the person that built that, right? There's a hall inside which has perfect acoustics. He used to be an organ player or something like that.
Yeah, he was an acoustical engineer. He designed major theaters all over the world, actually. Yeah,
wow.
George Eisenhower. He was an interesting guy. Yeah, I worked on that house.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Oh, so
Anyway.
now, Unc, so I mean, since we're talking about oystering in the past, how about the present? I mean, oysters are coming back now, aren't they?
yes, they're coming back in the sense that they're cleaning up the waters. There is a market for them. I've been noticing that the oyster sets have really been good sets in the last decade. So they're coming, and we have a couple of good oystermen here in Stony Creek locally that they actually farm and take care of the oysters. They just don't go out there and drag oysters. They go out there and farm them. Consequently, you get a good quality oyster now. And they had all the businesses that were in the store. You had Bradley's were the major lobster business they had going. You had Medlin's Dairy going too at the same time.
Yeah.
They were going strong. So you had everything you needed was right here in Stony Creek.
How about the lobstering? How's that now?
The water's too warm for that. They're getting some water, some fish out or lobsters out in the deep water, but not in the thimbles anymore.
Yeah.
And it's actually because I believe the water warmed up. Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're going to move over to the next exhibit here at the Stony Creek Museum, and that is the Fife and Drum Corps.
Okay.
So let's walk over here. And now here's one of the uniforms that they wear, the hat. Beautiful.
Yep.
Now they've been around since when? The 1880s?
1886.
Wow, so
Yeah.
they've been around a long time.
Yeah, 1886. They've been around, and they actually go all over. I mean, they've been down to I believe it was Eisenhower's inaugural.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were down
They
there.
were in the parade, yeah.
Yeah, and they go to Europe quite often, and they invite other corps from Europe to come here, and they host it.
Wow.
And they bought, I think in 1936, if I recall right, they bought the Seaside Hall, which it was called Seaside Hall. It was a roller rink.
Oh, really?
Okay, that's what it originally was a roller rink. And they bought it, and that was their home. So
It's a beautiful place.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
You worked on that, right?
I jacked it up, and got it out of the water and put in new foundations under it. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, the hall's in beautiful condition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Well, they do a good job. They take care of it.
They sure do. Yeah.
But they had some, champion fifers and drummers. Competition was pretty heavy, and these guys were, they were top notch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when you go into parades and all, and the parade march would always say that what beat you would march to, which is normally 120, which is what like a high school band or something like that would play. But the Stony Creek uses the ancient one, which is 95 beats per minute. They did that because in the old days, when you had to move an army, you weren't going to do them at 120 paces. You're going to do them at 90 paces or 95 paces. See? So
That's what they
so
call
that
it
was
ancient.
called the ancient.
Yeah, I got it. Oh, interesting. That's
And
that's
they
great.
still do it. Yeah.
That's great, Unc. Thank you for all that information. It's appreciated.
But I'll tell you one thing. If you talk about a treasure in Branford, the Stony Creek Drum Corps is a treasure to the town of Branford.
Yeah.
It really
it is.
They're great. They're great ambassadors for the town of Branford.
Well, coming up soon, I think that one of the most spectacular things they do every year is right on the 4th, they actually go out on a barge and they go all around the Thimbles playing, right?
Yeah, well, they go out on one of the sightseeing boats,
Yeah.
and they go out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they also collect money.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great way to do it. But they'll go to the land of an island, they'll play a song, and they'll accept donations,
Yeah.
which rightfully so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
As we move around here, you'll see over here there's a stained glass window which was taken out when it was no longer a church, but the people who had it gave it back to us. So now we have at least one window of when it was a church.
Oh, that's nice.
Also over here is a timeline. We have a timeline which shows from the beginning of with the glaciers and the Native Americans and all that. So,
Wow.
but,
So there's a lot of good things to see here at the Stony Creek Museum.
one other thing, I don't know if you can see it from here, but there's a sailboat up there, which was my sailboat, which I started racing about 50 years ago. And there's a Thimble Island Sailing Club, which races around the Thimble Islands. It's probably about 75 years old. That's still going strong.
That's great. There's a great picture of the quarry, Unc.
A painting, yeah. Somebody did a painting of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Pharmacy next?
yes. Okay. All right. So this is an old window from the old Branford Pharmacy down here.
Right. And this pharmacy was for a long time the Mattatuck Museum in Waterbury. And the Brainards, who are still here in town, family in town, when the Mattatuck no longer wanted it, the Brainards loaned it to us, so it's on loan from them. But we've got all the bottles and vials of things, and we don't know what's in them. We haven't sampled any of them, but they're all there.
Well, that's great. Okay. Well.
The boats in the hurricane.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just about to show you the hurricane exhibit along with Stony Creek boats. So stay with us. And again, it's 84 Thimble Island Road. Free parking in the back. Free admission. 488-4014 is the phone number, and StonyCreekMuseum.org is the website. And so this is our last exhibit. It's all about the Stony Creek boats and also the 1938 hurricane. So I guess we're going to start by talking about the WASP. And here's Unc DeRoss, who was the Branford First Selectman for 12 years.
All right, Frank. This here is that mural there is about the Wasp. The Wasp was a warship. It was the third Wasp built that was named the Wasp. A warship that she was a 6-gun sloop war, and Beatty bought that and used it as a barge to haul stone down to New York.
He did?
That's what they used it for.
Jeez.
And they left the mass on to help load the stone.
Oh.
The Wasp actually was one of the major boats that built the Statue of Liberty base.
Really?
Well, yeah, that and the American Eagle was another. That was his other boat. He owns 3 of them. I forget the name of the third one, but
Wow.
also the bones of and I say the bones, the wreck, the hulk, the ribs and all. You can still see them over in Old Quarry.
Really?
And the American Eagle is on this side over by the dikes, but she's under the mud.
Oh.
So both of the, so their bones are still there.
Wow.
One of them's in Stony Creek, the other one's over in Old Quarry in Guilford.
Wow.
This was the model of the Wasp right there.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And they converted it to a stone hauling barge.
You know,
And these other boats were mostly either pleasure boats, yachts, or work boats. Or they were work boats.
I see.
For example, that one there was one of my boats.
Really, the Kathleen?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I ran that boat for years in the Thimble Islands, and
Wow.
she had, I don't know, I might put on like 16,000 hours on that boat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
long time.
I built that one, but I built it to do a job, in particular, and it did it.
Wow.
And the rest of these are other boats that ply the waters here in Stony Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them, somewhere at some time, were in Stony Creek. For example, you see these the big tugboat up there?
Yeah.
Now that tugboat was one of the boats that would come in and grab a hold of the Molly Dodd and tow her down to to the Hudson River or East River, wherever the job was, but also for the Hudson River crossing, which later became the George Washington Bridge. And they would haul it in that old steam tug. In fact, they used to dredge from Ball's Dock directly south and kept it dredged just so that boat can get in and out.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
That's great, Unc.
But the rest of these boats are all working boats. You have the old oyster boats, and you have a lot of the ferry boats, as well as sightseeing boats.
Now, Unc, too, so speaking about the ferry boats, so isn't it true that the reason that the hotels flourished and people came here from New York and whatever in, July and August and September, this was before air conditioning, and it was cooler here on the coast, right?
Oh yeah, it was. It was a lot cooler. Yeah. Well, right now I'm sure we're probably 10 degrees cooler than anywhere else along.
Yes.
If you went inland.
Exactly. Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. They came down here for relief for that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And also, right, so those offshore islands where the land used to be cheap, like Block Island, Martha's Vineyard, even on Nantucket, for example, right? They're all expensive places now, but that's why they were so popular then, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like our good example, how times change. I remember when Phelps Island, Rogers Island,
Yeah.
sold for $32,000. And in that, the new owner of that, bought it. He sold off all the furniture, and there was 5 tons of coal in the cellar. He sold that too, and he paid for that house, and didn't cost him a dime.
Wow.
But now we're talking millions and millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
I mean, right. It's currently listed by the owner, Greg Jensen, for $36 million.
Well, I can't say that any of this was a positive move for the Thimble Islands.
true.
Not from what it used to be.
You're right. The old culture of the islands.
Yeah, the culture's gone. Yeah.
Too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it is too bad.
Frank, not only do we have a lot of historic boats, but there's a guy in town who has some antique boats, which he works on.
Yeah.
It's on Thimble Islands Road, and he works on them all the time. He's a very interesting guy. He's an artist, an oysterman, and now a boat restorer, connoisseur, and he has been known in the last year or so to take a beautiful boat that he's worked on and take it down to a wooden boat show and then see someone else's boat he likes better and say you want to trade, and so he comes back with a different boat.
No, that's true. Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. Okay, so that's
One
the
last thing
boats
for that story
hurricanes.
is
sorry.
that gentleman, he has an 1854 oyster boat, which is in Stony Creek right now. It's very, very broad. It's a sailboat, but it's very, very broad. It was used for oystering.
Well, so Ted, currently you're the vice president. So
Right.
the town of Branford, right? The town just extended the lease for 20 years. So, I mean, the guy you're talking about, or anybody else, if they have something like a big boat they want to donate, I mean, can this place handle something like that?
Talk to us. We're glad to talk to you.
488-4014. Anything involving Stony Creek, they're interested in.
Well, that guy that we're talking about, he has donated to this. Some of his stuff is here, no question.
Good,
In
that's
fact,
good.
most of the old timers here in town, were very generous in doing that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
Back in my day, you used to be able to identify a creeker, a true creeker. They had calluses on their hands.
That's a good one. Okay, so we're just about to wrap up, but before we go, we can't forget the horrible, 1938 hurricane. So I guess you two were both alive in that year, right?
I wasn't.
You weren't.
No, but he might have been.
I'm much older than Unc, but I wasn't alive.
You weren't alive.
I was born the year after. So, but some of my ancestors, there were 2 of them that had an island just off the town dock, and she actually was going to be the first woman Secretary of State. She had gotten the nomination, and the election hadn't happened, and the hurricane came. And of course, in those days, there was no warning, so people were having tea out, and the fortune looked up and said, "What's that?" And the story is, some of the stories here get extended or exaggerated upon, but they're wonderful stories, so we're not going to say they're not true. But the story I've heard about this one is that she was there with her parents, and the water kept coming up, and they thought, well, maybe they better go up another flight, so they went up to the second story, and the water kept coming. And I don't know whether she had a parrot or something that flew out the window, and the daughter decided to go out after it. And the next thing she knew, she was supposedly floating on a mattress ashore. She was saved by, so her parents both were killed. Oh. And I think there were about 21 deaths in Connecticut from that storm. There were 7 in Stony Creek. Wow. So it hit Stony Creek very, very, very badly. A lot. So everything is sort of now based, everything having to do with weather is now based on comparing it to the 1938 hurricane.
And, right, so if you look up there, right, it was September 21st, 1938. So in those days, probably there were still people on the islands. That's why so many people died.
Oh, sure there are.
Yeah.
And there were in, where I live, there's a cove, and to the left of my house on the cove, there were, I guess, 3 big Victorian houses. They were all washed into the sea. Jeez. So I think I wonder why mine wasn't, but I think it was probably because there was a big stone dock that went out. And of course, also based on where the storm came from, it saved mine.
That's great, Ted. You got a beautiful house there.
When I first started out, doing work out on the islands, most of my work was repairing damage from the 38 hurricane. And that was back, I started in the 60s, so 30 years later. But what happened is they changed ownership. They had people that had a little more money, or they wanted to fix the things and stuff like Potato Island out there, for example. All that was left was Lotson's house. But all the other, the 5 potatoes were showing. And they originally were all joined together by retaining walls, seawalls, which I rebuilt the seawalls, and I forget what year it was, but it was in the 70s. So the damage of the 38 hurricane is still, you can still see it. And the old timers say that you can still, one of the impacts they had was this this pampas grass that you see on the marsh, that one with the tassels on it. That wasn't around before the 38 hurricane. And they claimed that the winds were so strong that they blew the seeds over to here, and every place there was a fracture in our grasslands, in our meadowlands, this pampas grass would overtake it.
Oh, so that's where it came from?
Yeah. So that's what they say anyway.
Well, anyway, it's been great to be with you on our program today, and we've been speaking with former First Selectman Unc DeRoss, and also with the Stony Creek Museum Vice President Ted Els. And thank you. You both gave us a wealth of information, and this is a wonderful place, a great museum, and it's going to, grow for sure. You can make donations to it. It's a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. Anything to do with Stony Creek, they would like to see it, maybe copy it. They have a big archive underneath us here in the basement, and they want to grow it. They want to keep, Stony Creek, which is a very important part of Branford, and it's, all the great world-famous things about it. So anyway, thank you for being with us, sir.
Okay, it was a pleasure, Frank. Nice seeing you again. You too, Henry.
It's great to see you too, Unc. And as always, stay in good health.
We'll try.
That's all you can do. And great to see you too, Ted. Thank you so much for your information.
Frank, thanks very much for coming and bringing this wonderful cameraman here to us, and thank you, Henry, for that. And we hope that this will inspire people to come and see us actually in person.
Yeah, that's good. It's a great, great place. So I'm Frank Toohill, and for Henry Pond, thanks for being with us. Until next time, goodbye.